Hi, Lan.
Hi, Veronica.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited to hear all about books that matter to you.
Thank you.
So, we're just going to get started, and I'm going to ask you to share with me what are some of your earliest memories of reading and of books?
Well, I would have to. Okay, so I English is not my first language, so I entered not speaking any English in kindergarten. So I would say by the time first grade rolled around, I I was proficient in English, and my first memories really are of kind of like a circle time where we all sat down, and in my first grade class, I'll never forget her name, Mrs. Geo Carrot, because it was a split class where Mrs. Luther would take half the week, Mrs. Geo Carrot would take the other half, and I think Mrs. Geo Carrot was my favorite. So then it was. I just remember sitting there, and she's a really tall, beautiful, feathered hair lady, kind of like a brunette Farrah Fawcett. And I think my warmest moments is sitting there and watching her read and turn the pages and intonate her voice and look at us with her big brown eyes, because she was just, to me, as American as pie could be. And I would say the first book that resonated with me, I don't know, I mean, I was only 6, but it was a book called Tiki Tiki Tembo.
And what was that book about?
Okay, so it was about an Asian child. So I think, instant connection there, especially being a refugee. I was the only Asian child, not only in that class, but me and my sister, probably the only in that school at that time. So that would have been 1981. And so it was about a kid who, his name was Tiki Tiki Tembo, no Sa Rembo, and I don't remember it all. It's like Pari Pari Ruchi Pip Peri Pembo. And it was a really long name, and he would do things, and something happened, and he did something that his dad told him not to do. And I believe it's like he fell in a river or something and was drowning. So his little brother or somebody comes and runs to the dad and tries to say, "Tiki tiki tiki," and like here he is drowning because his name was too long to pronounce for him to get it out to say, save him, save my brother. And so basically, long story short, I think it was like a town elder or someone came, saved him. He barely made it, could barely breathe. And at the very end of the book, their next child that they had, they decided to name Chang.
I think I remember that.
And in my mind, like in the bath at night and all, I would always say, Tiki Tiki Tembo, and I would sing that song. And it always resonated as, just it kind of marked my childhood to the point where when I became a preschool teacher between the summers of college, I would dig for that book and look for that book so that I could reread it to my kids. I couldn't find it, and it wasn't until I had my own children that I found the book and I would read it to them when they were young.
Lan, do you have memories of anyone besides that teacher reading to you when you were a child?
Actually, nothing that sticks in my mind, nothing resonates, because in our culture, you tell stories. And so I got a lot of stories through my mom, my dad, an uncle who also came over with us. We didn't have a lot of family back then. So a lot of it was through stories. So any reading memories I have was myself thumbing through books, reading very easy books, and kind of mimicking my teacher. So at home, I would play teacher, hold up the book and change my intonation, and I would be like, "And look at this, children." It would just be role modeling what had been role modeled to me. It wasn't until a sociology class, the book was called Chimpanzee Politics. It's Frans de Waal, now I remember, and it's very applicable to today because there was a whole NPR story on this Chimpanzee Politics book. I was just taken in by it because it's sociology, so it really teaches you about chimpanzee behavior and how their alliances. There's like the alpha male, and then a bunch of beta, and then there you got your adolescents, and it's pretty much the rudimentary foundations of how society is built.
There was another book that you mentioned really enjoying as an adult. What was an adult book that you've really enjoyed?
So the book was Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. And if anything, where I would say Tiki Tiki Tembo was a validation of who I was in America as an Asian American. Chimpanzee Politics was kind of a precursor. What is the term? Like, it's kind of a warning about what you are about to kind of enter into this adult world. Well, Blink was, to me, is another form of validation of what you've gone through. So having been through the corporate world, I had like few corporate jobs that I really wanted to eject myself from quickly, but couldn't, with kids and starting a family, having a house. Blink was like an affirmation of the things that I was doing. And I think what Blink, it shows you studies in which, as a psych major, reviewing many, many studies and writing an honors thesis, it definitely spoke to me where it's numbers, and I'm really good with numbers. So it pretty much statistically, the SAT, when you take when you answer the questions and when you go back and change your answers, well, chances are when you change your answers, they tend to be wrong. Your first hunch tends to be correct, and that's pretty much, if you can just like project that into life, is that first blink, that quick hunch that you had about a person, about what you should be doing, about this, you don't ignore those because they tend statistically to be correct, or you're on the right track and going in the right direction. And then he'll give you examples, real life examples, and how that applies. So basically, it sounds like a psychologist / sociologist is writing it, but he writes it in terms that you can understand. It's very digestible, and he basically proves his hypothesis, his point, through these studies and these anecdotal stories that pretty much whatever your gut instinct was tends to be correct.
I wanted to ask if you would mention any hobbies that you have, or any enjoyments that you have outside of your regular work.
Well, now my regular work is my hobby, and it is my enjoyment. Obviously, we love camping, skiing, and being outdoors on the lake and things like that. But because of a rare bone cancer, it caused me to kind of reevaluate what I am doing, continuing in real estate. Having two children that were 6 and 8 was the number one reason to continue a career that was lucrative. But I also had to reevaluate, how can I incorporate what I love, travel, philanthropy, also what I love and I've always done from as early as I can remember, work and being a mom and being around my children and picking them up at 1:17 on weird days or when they're sick, and still being there because I was able to do that as a real estate broker. So I knew to follow my gut is I could speak. I mean, as a CASA volunteer, I had no nervousness, no problem public speaking when it was about something I loved. So that much I knew. Children, and not having my own children, which is a totally different story. Children of the world, when I can do that, I can speak confidently and I know what I'm doing. So I needed to find that and translate it into a career. So over a period of 6 weeks, I really had to think about it. It was the 6 weeks that my biopsy was out and we were not sure if I needed, all the radiation, chemotherapy, like all this good stuff. So one thing I knew as a kid is I always drank tea, and I know good tea. I know if it's good, I know if it's bad. I don't care if it was plucked by a monkey in the Yunnan forest. I don't, it's either good or bad. That much we do know. So I kind of started doing research, and then that became a huge pivot of basically launching my own tea company, learning about tea, becoming a tea sommelier, and taking what I love, which is hosting and writing out handwritten invitations and having people come and taste and experience what tea is. Because tea is a ritual, it's a lifestyle, it's an art form. It is the whole experience about smelling and drinking and picking out your mug, even if it's a tea bag, boiling your water and having patience and doing the whole thing, waiting for it to cool down, sip it, forget it, it gets too cold, microwaving it. The whole thing is an experience. And so how do I encapsulate all these things I love about it into a business? So that's where that has translated for me, like in studying about tea and being able to incorporate it as part of my life and sharing a cup of tea with people and having that connection. And I say it's a hug in a mug. It truly is, because I'm sourcing full leaves around the world that were like fair trade, ethically sourced, and it's a renewable resource, and it's organic and it's clean. And I try not to put stuff in pesticides, toxins, metals, with staples and things like that. So that, as I approach 50, is probably one of the best decisions I've ever made, to share what I love and kind of make it into one. They say leave work at home. I have never been that person. I take it with me. I dream about it. I dream about real estate. I dreamt about forecasting numbers when I did that. And now it could bring peace, not only to me and my life. It's almost like a full circle where I can now exude that and share that, and actually bring clean water initiatives and water wells, and help people source organic tea into their lives.
And so you've talked about several books that mattered to you over the course of your life. In general, why do you think that books are important? Why do books matter?
It's still very relevant, and books and print and words is very relevant because it's part of the human experience. And it's not just about whether you're technologically able. It's really creating that full experience so that we could understand it from a 3D perspective.
Do you see any connection between that book that you shared, Blink, and Trusting Your Gut, to making this huge life change? Is there a connection between what you read and what you did?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at all 3 books of mine, it's a reflection of my whole life. And if you kind of superimpose the books of me, I loved teaching and doing business and being with people and eating. And so in so many ways, those books that I've read throughout my life are a reflection of me, my heritage, and doing business, reading people, and basically just finding my way through life is kind of what Blink helped me do. Is just like, yeah, keep on doing that. What you were doing, it was not even like a pivot. I would take multiple U-turns in my life with the jobs I've taken, and not really thought about it. No fear about it. Just having to deal with the consequences of my decisions is pretty much my adult life. So those books are kind of a reflection of my path and who I am in business, in philanthropy, in, just trying to incorporate culture in my culture, and not, without trying to offend other people. And I think it's kind of been a fair depiction of my life.
Lan, thank you so much for joining me today. I learned so much from you. This was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. That was fun.